第19話、大政奉還と徳川慶喜の苦悩。幕末の風雲は未曾有の変革の波間に翻弄されていた。徳川幕府は約260年にわたる平和と繁栄を築き上げてきたが、その体制は次第に崩れ始めていた。外圧と内紛、改革と反発が交錯する中で、徳川慶喜が15代将軍としてその座に就いた時、幕府はすでに存亡の危機に直面していた。大政奉還はこの幕府の終焉を告げる一大事件となる。1867年10月14日、徳川慶喜は大政奉還を表明した。これは徳川幕府が政権を朝廷に返上するという歴史的な決断であった。慶喜は自らの判断に苦しんでいた。彼は幕府を維持しつつも、時代の潮流に逆らえない現実を直視していたのだ。徳川慶喜は将軍としての重責を背負い、長州と薩摩の連携に強い危機感を覚えていた。長州藩と薩摩藩は倒幕の機運を高めていた。彼らは共に幕府打倒のための連携を強化し、密かに計画を練り上げていた。その動きは明確であり、彼らの主張は声高に叫ばれていた。彼らの動きは明確だった。朝廷の敵は幕府だ。徳川が力を持ちすぎている、許すまじ。長州と薩摩は、幕府が朝廷の権威をないがしろにしていると非難した。彼らにとって徳川家の長きにわたる支配は不正であり、その力を削ぐことが正義と信じていた。彼らは、朝廷の敵は幕府であると掲げ、全国に倒幕の意思を訴えた。その主張に慶喜は、ただならぬ緊張を感じた。徳川慶喜は、長州と薩摩の連携に対して強い危機感を覚えた。彼らの計画が成功すれば、徳川幕府の崩壊は避けられない。彼は、自らの立場と幕府の未来について深い思索にふける。慶喜は自らの判断が歴史に与える影響を痛感していたのだ。慶喜は冷静に状況を分析した。長州と薩摩の連携はただの策略ではなく、強い信念に基づくものであった。彼らは幕府の圧政を打破し、朝廷の権威を回復させることを目指していた。彼らの主張には一理あった。徳川幕府は確かに長い間、強大な力を持ち続け、その権力に対する反発が次第に高まっていたのだ。一方で、慶喜は自らの立場を守るため、そして幕府を存続させるための策を模索した。彼は、幕府の力を一旦朝廷に返上することで、長州と薩摩の攻撃を回避しようと考えた。これは一見、幕府の放棄とも取れる行動であったが、実際には戦略的な撤退であった。朝廷に政権を返すことで、幕府が攻撃の対象から外れることを狙ったのだ。このような複雑な状況の中で、慶喜は苦悩し続けた。彼は将軍としての責任を果たしつつも、時代の波に逆らえない現実に直面していた。大政奉還という決断は幕府の終焉を告げるものであったが、同時に新たな時代の幕開けを意味していた。彼は一つの苦肉の策を思いついた。もしも徳川家が一個の家臣のような存在に過ぎなくなれば、長州や薩摩の生きり立つ理由も薄れるはずだ。幕府という形を解体し、朝廷の体制を整えることで、事態の収拾を図ろうとしたのである。徳川慶喜の大政奉還という決断は、まさに歴史の転換点であった。長州藩と薩摩藩の指導者たちは、その知らせを受けると驚愕した。 幕府が自らの意思で政権を朝廷に返上するとは予想外の展開であり、これにより幕府を潰す理由が一気に失われたのである。江戸城内、大広間に集まった徳川幕府の重臣たちは、将軍徳川慶喜を中心に緊張した空気の中で議論を交わしていた。大政奉還という歴史的な決断をした後、次なる一手を模索していたが、意見はまとまらず、会議は混迷を極めていた。将軍徳川慶喜は会議の中央に座しながらも一言も発しなかった。彼の顔には深い沈黙が漂い、その瞳は遠くを見据えているようであった。家臣たちはそんな慶喜の態度に不安を覚えつつも、次々と自らの意見を述べ始めた。大政奉還は確かに驚異的な決断でしたが、このままでは我々の権威が失墜しますと、松平春嶽が声を上げた。我々はどうすべきか、はっきりした方針を定めねばならない。いや、それよりもまず、長州と薩摩との関係を改善すべきではないかと、老中の一人が反論した。彼らの怒りを鎮めなければ、さらなる戦乱を招くだけだ。関係改善だと別の家臣が声を荒げた。彼らは我々を許すつもりなどない。参勤交代の恨みを忘れていないのだ。我々が譲歩すれば、それは弱さを見せることになる。しかし、実際のところ、長州と薩摩が我々に何を求めているのかを考えるべきではないか、と別の家臣が冷静に言った。彼らもまた、この国の未来を考えているのだから、話し合いの余地はあるはずだ。話し合いの余地などない、と春嶽が断言した。我々が強固な姿勢を示さなければ、彼らはますます図に乗るだけだ。我々は300年もの間、この国を治めてきたのだ。その誇りを忘れてはならない。だが、その300年の間に多くの外様大名たちが苦しんできたのも事実だと、老中の一人が重々しく言った。彼らの恨みを無視しては、再び戦乱が起こるだけだ。我々は新たな時代にふさわしい対応を考えるべきではないか。新たな時代だと、それならば我々がその先導を務めるべきではないか、と、春嶽が反論した。徳川家の権威を守るためには、我々が再び政権を握り、この国を導かねばならない。家臣たちの激しい論争が続く中、慶喜は静かにその様子を見守っていた。彼の沈黙は、家臣たちにさらなる不安を募らせたが、彼自身の考えは表情からは読み取れなかった。やがて、議論は疲弊し、家臣たちは一旦会議を中断することに決めた。彼らはそれぞれの考えを胸に抱え、深い憂慮とともに大広間を後にした。徳川慶喜の沈黙の中、家臣たちの間では意見の対立が続いていた。彼らは幕府の存続と新たな時代の狭間で揺れ動き、その未来は依然として不透明であった。しかし、この混迷の中で、彼らは少しずつ次なる一歩を模索し始めていた。しかし、現実は厳しく、朝廷は政治の実務から遠ざかって久しい。何百年も徳川が政治を支配してきたのだ。300年の歴史を背負った慶喜は、無力感に睨まれながらも、あえて宣言する。徳川が仕切ると。
Episode 19: The Restoration of Imperial Rule and Tokugawa Yoshinobu's Struggle. The winds of the Bakumatsu era were caught in a tide of unprecedented change. For over 260 years, the Tokugawa shogunate had established peace and prosperity, but the system was gradually beginning to crumble. Amid external pressures and internal conflicts, amidst reform and resistance, Tokugawa Yoshinobu became the 15th shogun at a time when the shogunate was already facing a critical threat to its survival. The restoration of imperial rule Taisei Hoken would prove to be a monumental event signaling the end of the shogunate. On October 14, 1867, Tokugawa Yoshinobu announced the restoration of imperial rule, a historic decision in which the Tokugawa shogunate returned political power to the imperial court. Yoshinobu was tormented by this decision. While seeking to preserve the shogunate, he also faced the harsh reality that he could no longer resist the tide of the times. As shogun, Yoshinobu bore a heavy responsibility, and he felt a profound sense of danger over the growing alliance between the Chashu and Satsuma domains. These two clans were rallying towards the overthrow of the shogunate. They had been secretly coordinating, strengthening their ties to bring about the downfall of the Tokugawa regime. Their actions were clear, and their calls for rebellion grew louder. Their stance was unmistakable. The shogunate is the enemy of the imperial court. The Tokugawa has amassed too much power. This cannot be allowed to stand. Chashu and Satsuma accused the shogunate of disrespecting the imperial court's authority. To them, the long-standing dominance of the Tokugawa family was unjust, and they believed it was their duty to strip the shogunate of its power, raising banners that declared, "The shogunate is the enemy of the court." They called for the nation to unite under the cause of overthrowing the Tokugawa regime. Yoshinobu felt the gravity of the situation weighing heavily upon him. He recognized that if the alliance between Chashu and Satsuma succeeded, the shogunate's collapse would be inevitable. Yoshinobu, deeply contemplating his role and the future of the shogunate, was fully aware of the historical impact his decision would have. Yoshinobu analyzed the situation with cool rationality. The alliance between Chashu and Satsuma was not merely a political maneuver. It was driven by a deep conviction. They sought to dismantle what they saw as the shogunate's oppressive rule and restore the imperial court's rightful authority. There was some merit to their argument. Over the centuries, the Tokugawa shogunate had indeed wielded immense power, and opposition to that authority had gradually been growing. At the same time, Yoshinobu sought ways to preserve his position and the shogunate itself. He considered a strategy to preempt Chashu and Satsuma's attacks by voluntarily returning power to the imperial court. Though this might appear to be the shogunate's surrender, it was, in reality, a strategic withdrawal. By returning political power to the court, Yoshinobu hoped to remove the shogunate from its role as the central target of their opposition. Yet Yoshinobu remained tormented by his decision. As shogun, he felt bound to fulfill his duty, yet he faced the inevitable reality that he could not resist the flow of history. The decision to restore political power to the imperial court signified the end of the shogunate, but at the same time, it heralded the beginning of a new era. Yoshinobu devised a desperate plan. If the Tokugawa family could be reduced to the status of an ordinary vassal, then perhaps Chashu and Satsuma would lose their fervor for confrontation. By dismantling the structure of the shogunate and helping to restore the political authority of the imperial court, Yoshinobu sought to manage the situation and avoid further conflict. The restoration of imperial rule was indeed a turning point in history. When the leaders of Chashu and Satsuma received the news, they were shocked. The shogunate's decision to voluntarily return political power to the court was an unexpected development, and it swiftly eliminated their main justification for bringing down the Tokugawa regime. Inside Edo Castle, in a vast hall, the high-ranking officials of the Tokugawa shogunate gathered around Shogun Tokugawa Yoshinobu, discussing the next move in an atmosphere of deep tension. Although the historic decision to restore power to the imperial court had been made, they were still searching for their next course of action. The discussions were growing increasingly chaotic. Sitting silently at the center of the meeting, Yoshinobu said nothing. His face was marked by a deep silence, his gaze distant as if contemplating far-off horizons. His retainers, sensing the weight of Yoshinobu's demeanor, grew anxious but continued to voice their opinions one after another. The restoration of imperial rule was indeed a bold decision, declared Matsudaira Shungaku, breaking the silence. But if we proceed like this, our authority will be lost. We must set a clear course of action. No, one of the senior counselors Roju objected. First, we must seek to improve relations with Chashu and Satsuma. If we don't quell their anger, it will only lead to further conflict. Improve relations, you say? Another retainer barked. They have no intention of forgiving us. They still harbor deep resentment over the Sankin Kotai system. Any concession from us will be seen as weakness. Still, should we not consider what exactly Chashu and Satsuma want from us? A calmer voice replied. They, too, are thinking of the future of this country. Surely there's room for negotiation. There's no room for negotiation, Shungaku declared. If we do not show strength, they will only become more emboldened. For 300 years, we have ruled this country. We must not forget our pride in that. And yet, during those 300 years, many of the outer lords Tozuma daimyo have suffered. One of the senior counselors gravely added. If we ignore their grievances, we'll be inviting further conflict. We must respond in a manner suited to a new era. A new era, you say? Then should we not be the ones to lead it? Shungaku countered. To preserve the authority of the Tokugawa house, we must reclaim control of the government and guide the country ourselves. As the retainers' heated debates continued, Yoshinobu quietly observed the scene. His silence only deepened the retainers' anxiety, but his thoughts were unreadable behind his expressionless face. Eventually, the arguments wore thin, and the retainers decided to adjourn the meeting. Each left the hall, burdened with their own thoughts and a profound sense of worry. The shogunate's retainers were caught in a struggle between preserving their regime and facing the new era. The future remained unclear, yet amidst the confusion, they began searching for their next step forward. However, reality was harsh. The imperial court had long been distanced from the actual governance of the country. For centuries, the Tokugawa shogunate had held control. Weighed down by 300 years of history, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, despite his growing sense of powerlessness, made a bold declaration. The Tokugawa shall continue to lead,